Hey guys, it is Christina here. For those of you who are yet to know me, my name is Christina. I am a naturopath, herbalist, GAPS practitioner, life coach, business coach, mentor, all sorts of different things, along with being a mum of 7 children and homeschooling and running my 2 businesses. So welcome to my session in here. I'm going to be talking about the physical manifestation of our emotions and our beliefs on our bodies and the impact that it has on our health. So when you jump on, say hi, let me know you're here. It will also let me know that the comments are working. So hey Leisha, hey Jocelyn, nice to see you here. Hi Lisa. As you come in, I would love it as well if you could share what you're drinking. So if you're drinking water, share that. If you're drinking a beautiful cup of tea, share that. And, share in the comments. What are you drinking? Did you bring a cuppa to this beautiful event? And, hopefully you've got some pen and paper and a notepad ready to write down any of the amazing stuff that will inevitably come out of this session. So first of all, I want to thank you for giving up your time to come and listen to me speak and let me share some of my story with you and some of the work that I do in the world with you. So thank you for giving up your time for that. And I trust that this session is actually going to serve you in a whole bunch of different ways. So when Carly Marie put this event together, I was put in the category that I'm in, and you're having a hot chocolate, Deb. Beautiful. Beautiful. My husband is making me a cup of tea, so I'm hoping that that's going to come very, very soon. So again, when Carly Marie was creating this event, one of the things that came to mind was I was pondering through, what am I going to talk about? What needs to come through? What do I need to share? And the thing that came through for me that I needed to share was about how our beliefs affect what's happening in our bodies and in the world that is around us. Jocelyn, about to grab a lemon ginger honey tea. Been feeling a bit sinusy today. That one's going to be beautiful for you. So for me, this is going to be a long story, but I'm kind of going to try and keep it as short as possible but with enough detail that you get the picture. So I think I'll start back in 2013. So 2013, I was, 2012, I was pregnant. And I was pregnant at the time, I was about 7, nearly 8 weeks pregnant. And I just, had that little glow of like this little secret story inside of me about knowing that I was pregnant. And it was an interesting pregnancy at that point because normally for me, I've had 7 children. So 6 pregnancies prior to this one. Every single one of those pregnancies, my head was in a bucket from day 5, like week 5. I was vomiting, I was sick, I was just like, I would vomit so much that I would burst the blood vessels in my eyelids and the blood vessels in my throat, and I'd be vomiting out blood, and like it was just not very nice being pregnant. And this one was different because I didn't have any of that. I was at like week 7, nearly 8, and I had not experienced any morning sickness whatsoever. And I thought, whew, this is a bit different. This is a bit unusual for me. And, because I've had so many pregnancies and that's been the experience for me, what I did as a bit of a routine, as soon as I knew I was pregnant, I would get into the kitchen and I would make oodles of freezer meals, and I would do anything that I thought was really important that needed to get done before I started to feel sick. So I would make sure that I'd get all of that stuff done because I knew not much was going to happen during the pregnancy until that baby was born. And then, heaps more could get done after that because suddenly I wasn't feeling sick anymore. Even though I had a newborn, I had energy and I wasn't vomiting and I wasn't doing all those things. Hey, Kathy, nice to see you here. And so this pregnancy was very, very different. Like, I'd done all those things. I've filled up my freezer. I did things in the garden because I really wanted to get a harvest from the garden that year. And so we'd been planting like crazy, sticking every single seed we had in the garden in order to hopefully make it grow, and I could probably get the kids to go and water it for me while I was not feeling well. All of that sort of stuff we did. And then, week 5 came and I wasn't sick, so I did some more things. And week 6 came and I wasn't sick, and so I did some more things. And week 7 came and I still wasn't sick, and so I did some more things. The difference, however, was that my husband and I had just been going on a healing journey. So my husband had irritable bowel syndrome, and he'd had it for all of the time that I had known him. And he'd had it for much longer. Pretty much his mum said that, he's had it forever. And so he had irritable bowel syndrome, and we went searching and we looked like left, right and center. We'd gone to doctors. We'd done all of the things. We went to one doctor that said that he needed to be eating more bran, and that will have him shitting like a rocket, because he was, Russian. And then we went to another doctor, and she said that it's because he made me have so many children that he had irritable bowel syndrome that he'd had all of his life before he'd even met me. Without even asking anything about me, about whether I wanted to have the children that I wanted. Her perception was that he was keeping me barefoot and pregnant. I'm like, lady, you really don't know me. Another doctor thought it was in his head and wanted to do a brain scan. He had, celiac tests. He did all of those things, and nothing was actually working. So we'd gone gluten-free. We'd done all these things. And none of that was actually working for him. And finally, at that stage, when we first started the healing journey, I'd had enough. I was like, I can't do this anymore. My husband needs to be able to think. I need him, because he was in so much pain he wouldn't be able to sleep. And then during the day, he'd fall asleep because he was so tired, and he would be angry and he'd be frustrated all of the time. And it just wasn't a really great, cohesive sort of atmosphere when I had 4 children under 4, and number 5 was on the way, and all of those things. And I was like, that's it. I've had it. And we started to make steps to creating a better life. And one of those steps was, I just made a rule. If I don't make it, we don't eat it. And that gave us great momentum. And we saw lots of change from that. But then it wasn't quite still enough. So we then started to go through the process of moving on to GAPS, which is gut and psychology syndrome, or gut and physiology syndrome. And essentially it's just what's happening in your gut is affecting the rest of your body. So it's affecting your brain from being able to think as well as it should do, function as well as it should do, or it's affecting your physiology. So some other parts of your body are out, like, you might be experiencing arthritis, or you might be experiencing thyroid conditions, or adrenal fatigue, or all sorts of other problems because what's happening in your gut is not working well. And so we started on this diet called the GAPS diet, and it was challenging, to say the least. It was challenging, and we had amazing results from it, which actually is what kept us going, was because we were getting such amazing results from it. And my husband, like for him, he'd had psoriasis, the whole time that I had known him. His mum literally was giving me his psoriasis cream when we got married, saying, he'll need this for the rest of his life. And I'm like, yeah, nah. And so his psoriasis completely disappeared, and it's never come back. And I would take a symptoms chart, and I would, ask every week or so what the symptoms were. And one of his symptoms was that he had chronic back pain for most of his life as well. So I'd get him to score his back pain out of a 10. And I remember sitting there this one day and asking him, so what is your back pain out of a 10 today? And he turned to me like I was completely loony and I was making stuff up. He's going, what are you talking about? I don't have any back pain. Because it had slowly dispensated that he'd forgotten that he'd even had that back pain to start with. And so we were continuing on this journey, and we were getting fabulous results for him. I was getting fabulous results. We were seeing changes in the kids. We saw my son, who had been born with a multi-drug resistant blood infection, and a hole in his lung and all sorts of things like that. We saw him taking leaps and bounds in his communication skills and being able to talk and able to do things that he wasn't able to do before. And so it was really amazing to see those things happen. And so it's fair to say that for me, during that period in time, I got to the point where I was at my most healthiest. I hadn't finished the journey. I wanted to keep going, but I was at the point where I'd reached the healthiest I'd ever been in my entire life, right in that moment. And then that's when I fell pregnant with baby number 7. And so, like I said, hey Paula, thanks for joining. And like I said, all my other pregnancies, like week 5, you could pretty much bank on it. My head would be in a bucket. I'd be vomiting. It was nothing for me to lose 20 kilos in a pregnancy because of how much I would vomit during those pregnancies. And then suddenly, week 5 comes with this pregnancy and I'm not sick. Week 6 comes and I'm not sick. Week 7 comes and I'm not sick. And then as we head towards week 8, it was my daughter's birthday. And we have a bit of a birthday tradition in our family, that is to make birthday pancakes. And so as I was coming down the stairs, my son was there and I had this secret inside that I was carrying this baby, and I was delighted as well because it was the first pregnancy when I wasn't like super sick. And it was just like the sun was shining a different shade of shine that day. And then all of a sudden I felt this gush and I was like, that's a bit weird. And I thought, maybe I've peed myself. But I've never peed myself before, but I have heard that pregnant women do that. And, I have had 6 children before, so maybe that's what's happened. So I went back upstairs and I went to the toilet, and that's when I discovered I was bleeding. And I had this big audible sigh that my husband, who was still in bed at the time, could hear it from the bedroom. And he's like, what's going on? And he comes running out, and I'm in this moment of how do you tell your partner that you're having a miscarriage? How do you do that? And so I'm trying to tell him that through broken words. I think this is what's happening. I think I'm losing the baby. This is gonna suck. And, I'd had plans that day. I was meant to teach a fermentation class. It was my daughter's birthday. We're going to do special things for her birthday. And then suddenly, this is my morning. And so I cleaned myself up. And then as I'm cleaning myself up, the baby drops out. And there I am in my bathroom with my husband. And we're holding our baby in our hands. And it was like... I cannot explain in words the emotions of that moment, having this experience happening for me, but at the same time being a parent going, this is my daughter's birthday. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to make this special for her and process what's going on for me at the same time. And I also knew that I had, an Rh negative blood type. So I knew that if I wanted to have more babies, I was going to have to go to the hospital and get an anti-D. And I, had to do that as quickly as possible. So my husband took our baby and he went and buried that in our backyard. And in that moment, we decided it's probably a good idea for us to maybe go to McDonald's. We'd not eaten junk food. We'd not eaten even just milk. Unless it was fermented, we'd not even eaten milk for 8 months at that point. And we're going to McDonald's for breakfast. So we went to McDonald's because, we do pancakes for breakfast and they do pancakes. So we took them to McDonald's for breakfast because it's right near the hospital as well. So we thought, we'll go do that. They can have that. Then we can go to the hospital. I can get a quickly checked over and get my anti-D shot, and then we'll go home and do whatever else is going to happen for the rest of the day. And so we did McDonald's, we went to the hospital, and it took a little bit longer than we thought it was going to take. They took bloods, and they kept coming back and asking me really strange questions. Are you sure that you've miscarried? I'm like, yes. I literally held my baby in my hands. My husband was there. I'm 100% sure that I've miscarried. And I'm just like, oh, this is weird questions. Why are they asking this? And then, after going back and forth with them, they were asking me, how do you feel? Do you feel nauseated or anything like that? And I'm like, yeah, I feel real sick because I just ate McDonald's and I haven't eaten any processed sugar in 8 months. I haven't eaten like anything that had anything in it other than real food for 8 months. So yeah, I feel sick, but I couldn't tell you if it was just because of that or if it was because of other things. And so back and forth. And then eventually they said to me, well, your HCG levels are really high. And it's not normally this high for somebody we see who is having a miscarriage. And that was pretty much it. I was like, so what does that mean? What does that mean for me? Well, we're not sure. So we'll have to get you in for a scan. And they couldn't get me in for a scan for 4 days. And so they sent me home. We finished the rest of the day. We got more takeout that day. So we go from eating like super clean, super healthy to eating takeout twice in 1 day just for a birthday so that we could keep it sort of special for her. Anyway, so we did that and we're at home, and those 4 days were like, took forever. It was like waiting for a millennium to come past to go get this ultrasound done to find out what was happening. And as we went and had the ultrasound done, what we found was that I had a subchronic hematoma, and it was behind one of my placental sacs. So I had twins, and we just lost one of those babies, but I still had another one. And so it was this mixed feeling of, I'm really joyous that I still have a baby, but I'm also still really grieving this baby that I don't have. And if you knew me in real life, you would know that anytime I felt pregnant, I was the lady praying that I would have twins. And then suddenly I got twins and I lose one of them. And so this emotional roller coaster starts, and I have to go on bed rest at that point because they're not sure what's going to happen with that other baby. So we want to, give that baby the best possible chance for a beautiful outcome as possible. So I need to be on rest so that I'm not doing too much, not lifting anything heavy, all of that sort of stuff. And so that began what was a very tumultuous pregnancy. So throughout that pregnancy, I went on to have probably another 8 bleeds. And every time I would have a bleed, I would have to go to the hospital and check to see if I had a live baby. Leisha, thank you so much. Thank you so much. So what would happen is I'd have a bleed, we'd go to the hospital, and then they'd put me in this, like, oh my God. Sometimes I think that some of these facilities don't have a brain. So they'd sit me, a lady who's bleeding, going to check to see if she still had a live baby, in a waiting room with all of these heavily pregnant women who were complaining about being pregnant and were like, I can't wait till this is over. And I'm sitting there going, I just want this to stay. I want this to stick. So it was this real juxtaposition sort of experience. And we live in a reasonably small town at that time. Tasmania is where I'm from, and it's not necessarily a big island. Like, yes, I don't know everyone in the island, but we're a small island. So we know, you will run into somebody eventually somewhere, especially where I was living in Launceston at the time. And so I'd be in there, and occasionally somebody I would know would come in while I'm sitting there waiting to check if I still have a live baby, and they would know me and they'd go, oh my gosh, are you pregnant again? And I'd be like, I don't know. Maybe. I'm just waiting to see if my baby's still alive. And so it was a really awkward situation, which was compounded by those sorts of things, like sitting in a waiting room with pregnant women who couldn't wait for their pregnancies to be over, and people who would be coming in and excited that I was pregnant again, but then I'm like, yeah, I don't know how to deal with this. And so it would be this moment of waiting for my turn. Then they do a quick scan, see that there was still a heartbeat. I'd get sent home and then, wait for the next bleed to come. And it was this roller coaster of that happening on repeat for quite some time. Sometimes they were little bleeds. Most of the time they were big bleeds. And it was very much a growth opportunity in the sense of I got to know the people in my community who really were ready to put you know, put their sneakers on and come and run at my house, or come look after my kids, or come feed them, or come do schoolwork with them, or, you know, provide meals for us. It was a real opportunity of getting to know our local community, but it was also a real opportunity of being on this emotional roller coaster of going, I don't know what's going to happen next. So fast forward to 36 weeks. So during that whole time, me and my very strong personality, determination type, I needed stuff to do. So during that whole time, I was making, I learned to crochet, and I crocheted this whole lot of stuff for my baby, bonnets, anything I learned to crochet. And I, you know, made a nice little blanket for her and all sorts of other stuff. And so fast forward to 36 weeks, I'm sitting at home, and my husband at that point, because we knew this was likely to be a, you know, challenging pregnancy and birth, he decided to quit his job at that point and go and study, so that he could drop the study at any point and come running home if he needed to. And so 36 weeks, he's off at the uni, which is about 15-minute walk from our place. And I'm sitting there crocheting some socks. I never finished these socks. I could never pick them up again after this. But I was crocheting some warm winter socks, and I felt that same gush again. It was just, and I like had that real sinking feeling, because I'm like, oh God, I know what this is. I know what this is. And so I sat there for a moment breathing, and for some reason, you know how everything seems to happen at once? Well, this was one of those times where everything happened at once. So Ben's phone was not working the way that it should, and the only way that I could get in contact with him was via Facebook. So I run to the bathroom. One of my children grabs the phone. Another one of my children goes to the lady next door and asks her to come over and help. And another one of my children brings me the computer, so that while I'm on the phone to the ambulance, I can be messaging my husband to come home. And, you know, I took a photo of that message, and it was like, bleeding, come home fast. That was the message that he got. So he dropped everything. He ran. A same sort of message went to my best friend at the time. Come look after my children, please. It was not that nice. It was just like, I need help. Come to my house right now. So she piled her children into the car and came to our house. And I'm on the phone on the toilet, and the sound that I could, the best way that I could describe it would be like I was peeing, and it was not pee, it was blood. It was just blood coming out as much, like just as much as I was peeing. And so I'm on the phone, and the ambulance lady says, well, you need to get off the toilet because we need to kind of monitor how much blood you're losing. And I just click into like mum mode, which was totally weird, because the bathroom was here, like the toilet where I was is here, and then the bathroom's right here. Now there's this carpeted area between the door here and there. And I was like, I'm going to get blood on the carpet. And I often think back about this, and I go, Christina, what on earth were you thinking? Who gives a damn if you got blood on the carpet at that moment in time? I cared right then that I would get blood on the carpet. So I did this little jiggy kind of dance thing to get over to where the bathroom was, because I figured, you know, it's tiles, we can wash blood off the floor. And then the lady is saying to me on the phone, I need you to sit down. I need you to get on the floor. And I'm looking at the floor, and like, it was not clean. So again, I'm having this mum moment going, nope, I don't think I can do that. The floor's not clean. I could sit on the bath. I'll do that. I'll sit on the bath. And she's like, no, I need you to get on the floor in case you pass out. We don't want you to give yourself a head concussion or anything like that. You need to get on the floor. And I'm like, oh, but it's really dirty. She's like, have you got a towel that you can put down on the floor? And as I think back, I go, what on earth were you doing, Christina? Like, really, who gives a rat's that the floor was dirty? Once you'd bled all over it, it was going to be a whole lot dirtier. Anyway, those were the things that I cared about in that moment in time. So I put a towel down, my kids went and grabbed me a blanket, and then the ambulance came, and Ben was saying to me later that as he was running, the ambulance went past him and they had sirens on, so that made him panic even more. So they come, they try and get a vein. My veins suck, so they always take at least twice or 3 times to get a vein. They get a vein. At that point, contractions kind of start as well. So not only is blood coming out, but now my uterus is contracting. And I had a condition that was called placenta previa and placenta previa. So my placenta was presenting first. So if I went into labor, the first thing that was going to come out was my placenta. And if that came out, the likelihood was that, you know, my baby would only have a few minutes before she would die. And because at this time they did not know also that I had placenta previa, so my placenta had eaten through the lining of my uterus, and then it had attached to my bladder and to my major blood supply. That they didn't know. They just knew that the placenta was coming first at that point. And that's all I knew on a physical level. On a spiritual level, I had a really strong sense that I was going to die. And I'd had this strong sense for about a month before this delivery happened. And I would tell my husband, here's what I want you to know, so that when I leave, you know exactly what I want. You know how I want my kids raised, you know who I want at my funeral, you know all of that information, so that there's no doubt in your mind what my wishes were. Then what you choose to do with that is completely up to you. But you can't then say, I don't know what she wanted, because I made sure that you knew what I wanted. And he would say, stop talking about that. I don't need to know that. That's not going to happen. And I'm like, you need to know this. There's a strong likelihood that this is going to happen. So in that moment, that's what was happening. The placenta was coming first. Contractions were starting. More blood was coming out. And I needed to get to the hospital very, very fast. So the ambulance took me to the hospital. And on the way to the hospital, those contractions were starting to get stronger. And as they were starting to get stronger, I turned to the ambulance guy that was there with me. And I said, sorry, my family is getting a little bit noisy right now. So if you can hear it, I apologize. I don't have a mute button and I can't tell them to be quiet. But in that moment, like I was having these contractions, and I turned to the guy and I said, if she starts coming out, because she was in breech, grab her leg. Chella, shh.
It's not mine.
Go tell Dad.
Don't you want it?
Oh, I don't necessarily need this right now. Off you go.
I'm just doing
Okay,
it.
thank you. Thank you. Oh. So in that moment, like with the contractions starting, I turned to him and I said, if she starts coming out, I want you to grab her leg and I want you to pull. And he was like freaking out because he so didn't want that to happen. And he turns to the driver and he says, go faster. And so the ambulance went even faster at that point. And they rushed me upstairs. I had about 5 seconds with my husband where I was saying, I'm okay, I'm going to be fine, it's all right, goodbye, I love you, all of that sort of stuff. And then they rushed me into the OR. And I remember thinking back in that moment going, if only I knew what was happening next, I probably would have made sure that I kissed you and done other things because it was the last time he would see me awake for 7 days. So as I was into the OR, this is another one of those moments where they jump straight into action.
Look at my hard hand.
Oh my goodness. It's like they know. They know. Yes. Xavier, go talk to Dad. So in that moment, they jump into action. They're doing all the things. They're putting tubes in. There's one guy waxing me downstairs. He didn't tell me he was going to wax. He was just putting stuff on, getting everything. I thought he was doing, the brown stuff, the bentonite. I thought they were doing that. And then the next thing is ah! Didn't even tell me I was going to wax. So all of that stuff is happening around me. And then one of the midwives that was in the operating theatre, she grabs the Doppler and she's looking for the baby's heartbeat. And she can't find it. And so it is everybody in the OR suddenly goes quiet in that moment. And they're all looking. They're all just kind of listening, quietly doing their thing while they're trying to listen for the heartbeat. And she can't find it, and she's getting more panicked. And you could feel the whole tension of the room get higher and higher and higher. And then I remembered she was in breach. And I'm like, oh my God, you're looking in the wrong spot. She's over here. And so they put the Doppler on that spot. Bam, there's her heartbeat. And it's like the whole room just went... Like the whole room sighed at the same time, and there was about 20 people in there at that point, so you could actually hear it. And then they jumped straight back into action, and you know, they're getting everything ready. And because it was an emergency C-section, and they don't have time to put in a spinal, they don't have time to do any of those sorts of things, they have to put me to sleep under a general anesthetic. And I'd eaten that day. And so when you've eaten and you get a general anesthetic, they have to prevent the food from coming back up. And so what they do to prevent that is that they put their hand on your throat as if they're strangling you. And so they put the mask on, and he said, it's going to feel like I'm strangling you. The quickest way out of this is to breathe deeply and to get as much gas in as quickly as possible. And so I go to sleep with this sensation that somebody's strangling me. And that was it for me. That was it for me, from my conscious awareness for the next 6 to 7 days. But what happened for everybody else was a whole lot of stuff. So the C-section took place. Marcella was born. She had to be resuscitated, but she picked up very, very quickly. And then the work came to me. So during that work, what they were discovering was that I was bleeding out very, very fast. And they knew that I had the placenta previa, so the placenta was at the bottom of the uterus. They knew that. But they didn't know that I'd had placenta accreta, which is the worst type of placenta accreta. So accreta is where it just attaches too deeply into the uterus. Then there's increta, where it goes halfway in, and then there's percreta, where it evades all the way through. So I had mine evade all the way through into my major blood supply and into my bladder. And so at that point, I was bleeding so fast. This is how my doctor described it to me. He said, I could not see where you began and the placenta ended. The only thing I could do was use my hands to try and feel what I could feel. And then they got out as much of my uterus as they could and stitched me back up and sent me to ICU on life support. During that first operation, I'd gone through 40 units of blood, which equates to approximately 20 litres. They then took me to ICU, where I continued to bleed out, and my stats were continuing to drop and continuing to drop. So they took me back to theatre. They'd opened up my old C-section scar. They found more of my placenta. They pulled that out. They closed me up. They sent me back. I continued to bleed. They brought me back to theatre. They did the same thing, opened me back up, found more of my placenta, closed me up, sent me back to ICU, and I continued to bleed out. That happened 5 times, that exact way. Then after that, they decided to stick a camera in. So they opened up an artery in my leg, and they put a camera in, and they looked for more placenta. And that's where they started to find that there was placenta in my bladder, and that there was also placenta in my my major artery on my blood supply. So they went back in, they did those surgeries, and they closed me up and took me back to ICU. Around about operation number 4, they were pretty sure I wouldn't come back out of theatre. And Marcella she was well enough to come down. Like she was 36 weeks, so she was prem but not overly prem, and so they brought her down to the ICU and they put her on my chest while I was on life support. And I distinctly remember this moment. I thought that I was in recovery. So for anyone who's had a C-section, you have your C-section, then they put you in recovery to check that you're okay. I thought that I was in recovery, and I woke up enough. They'd had her on my chest, and I woke up enough just to lift my head a little bit, like I fought the sedation, and I just rubbed my chin across the top of her head, and then I went back to sleep. The nurse did that because she wanted to get a photo of the two of us together alive before I died. And when she did that and she saw that, she knew that I would come out of that operation because I would fight to live. And so I did. I came out of that next operation, and then, you know, a couple more operations where they had to do a whole heap of other stuff. And then on day 6, they finally took me off of life support, which was not a fun experience at all. For me, it's interesting to reflect back on what happened during that time, because I remember waking up and being very sedated, but frustrated. Like, you know, if they could read minds at that point, they're probably really glad that they couldn't, because I was saying all the swear words under the sun because I had this tube down my throat. I couldn't like talk or anything. I had like, I still have scars in the side of my neck where they'd put huge, you know, needles in so that they could pump blood directly into my heart to keep me alive. There was a tube in every orifice of my body except my nose at that point. But they didn't tell me any of that, and maybe if they did, I probably would forget it anyway. And so I'm sitting there for like hours feeling like I need to go to the toilet, but I can't talk to anybody. I can't move. I can't communicate in any way, shape or form. I don't even have the strength to lift my arm up and wave at anybody. And I'm there going, oh, I need to poo. But it was actually just the sensation of having a tube there, which I learnt later. Once I learned, I was okay, I can relax. I wish you'd told me that like hours ago. Yeah, so then it was the journey of recovery, which was a really, really long journey of recovery and going through the process of regaining my strength, because overall I'd gone through, it was 187 units, 178 units of blood. So that equals, oh gosh, half of that pretty much. So I'd gone through the normal blood amount for a person. I think it was nearly 20 times. So I'd used all of the available O negative blood in my state. I used half of what was available in Melbourne. So they were flying blood in to keep me alive. So if you're a blood donor, thank you very much. You may be one of the people that have kept me alive. So that was a big, massive experience for me. Now, this is where I'm going to kind of close that story a little bit and move forward to 2017. So, of course, I relearned to walk. I'm here, I'm alive, I'm well now, so I survived it all okay. There are some things that I will have forever, like some damage to my kidneys and, you know, parts of my body that I can't feel and all sorts of other stuff. But other than that, I'm good and well. 2017. The journey from there to 2017 was a transformational one where, you know, I decided a whole bunch of other things, one of which was that I was worth living my life the way that I wanted to live my life, and to get rid of all of the crappy stuff that was keeping me hidden. And one of those moments was, of course, taking photos and getting in my photos so that I had memories for my children, that when I was, you know, left, if I'd left, that they got to have photos of me. Paul is saying I knew parts of your story, but hearing it all, fuck. Yeah. Yeah, so after the experience of being on life support, you know, I sat at home and I looked through my photos and I'd realized that I wasn't leaving anything for my kids to remember me by, because of the shitty beliefs that I had inside of my head about who I am and what I'm allowed to have and all of those sorts of things. And so I just didn't show up in my life the way that I could have been showing up in my life because of all the messages that were going on inside of my head. So I, you know, made decisions then that I was going to make my life count, and that I was going to honor my children, honor myself, honor my spirit by actually deciding to be as much of me as I possibly could be, and continue to learn to be more of me every day. And so that's what I did, and that's what I've done since then. But 2017, I was at the end of my naturopathic studies, and, you know, I have an agenda for every year. I, set a word or an intention for things that I want to have happen for that year. And 2017 was the year of health for me. It was the last year of my naturopathy degree, and I'm like, right, I've gone through all of the stuff. I've made all these amazing changes. It's really time for me to nail in and focus in on my health and get my health back on track. And so I changed my password and everything. It was like 2017 health. Every time I typed it into my computer, 2017 health. And, I'd focus on that all the time. And that's what I was going for. And it wasn't until midway through 2017 that I was like, oh, I'm so unhealthy. I'm like probably in the worst health that I've been, except for when I was dying. And it was in that moment that I went, hang on. Maybe there's a belief there that I've been holding onto. And it was this belief around what is my definition of health. And as I really focused in and started to think about what was my internal definition of health, it was like deprivation. It was like, torturing your body and beating it into submission. And, you're not good enough to eat food. Like all of these really crappy messages around what it would take to be healthy and what healthy meant. And it wasn't these beautiful words. It wasn't like nourished, and it wasn't, whole, and it wasn't like all of these beautiful yumminess and delightfulness or any of this sort of good stuff. It was all crappy words that were coming out of me when I really started to dig deep into what my internal meaning and internal belief and messaging had been around health. And, there's whole lots of stuff in there. Like, my mom had an accident when she was 12, and then she had chronic health issues since then until she passed away this year. I could look through my family history and see all of these negative connotations around health, and I hadn't put two and two together. And when I sat back towards the end of 2017 and I went, my intention is that I want health. But the more I concentrate on health, the more I want to eat cake. And I don't think the cake's going to help me get towards health. And it was in that moment that I was realizing that it was my belief system that was keeping me stuck. It was my connection to words and connection to things that was keeping me stuck. Like, I'm not good enough for health. I'm not allowed to have health. Health means deprivation. Health means starvation. Health means torturing yourself with exercise that you hate in order to have a body that you might like. Like all of these shitty stories around health. And it was then that I went, I need to change this. I need to change my belief system, and I need to change my connection to health. I'm not going to use that word anymore. I'm going to pick something different. I'm going to pick, Caroline's saying it, health equals hard. I'm going to pick something else. I'm going to pick nourish. I'm going to nourish myself. I'm going to look at nourishing myself, and not just from a physical point of view, but also an emotional point of view, all of those sorts of things. And so as I started to change that, some of the other meanings came up for me. And the really big one that was the light bulb moment that changed everything was when I'd realized, if you remember back at the beginning of this story, I said that my husband and I had done gaps. And I was at my most healthiest. I was the healthiest I'd ever been in my entire life when we were doing gaps. And what happened directly after we were doing gaps, or while we were doing gaps? I nearly died. And actually, if you look at my health records, I died and they brought me back. And so my brain had connected health equals death. If you're pushing for health, you're going to kill yourself. And so internally, I was constantly fighting my body, because my body doesn't want to die. My body wants life. My body wants life, and it wants it abundantly. But I was saying to my body, I want death, because of the connection that it had made with me being at my most healthiest was when I was when I died. And so once I had made that connection, I was able to start to unmesh it. I was able to pull it away from each other. I was able to tease it out and go, oh my goodness, oh honey, I know why you created that belief. I can see why you would have thought that. I can see why that had happened. That makes so much logical sense to me. Why you, with the limited knowledge that you have of what's going on, made that connection. But it's so not true. It's so not true. They are two very separate things. And to be healthy and to live and to have life abundantly, to have health and all of those beautiful things does not mean you're going to die. You're going to have more life instead. And I had to do this self-talk where I was talking to myself and telling myself that story. And you can see, like, you know, what I'd been doing for years was actually sporadically going and just weighing myself and putting it into my phone. So I have this whole data collection of, you know, weights for myself. And you can see the moment that I had discovered that belief inside of me was the moment that my weight just started to go like that. And without even actually trying, I lost 15 kilos. Like, you know, we've eaten junk food in that time. We've, you know, definitely had Tim Tams in that time. Not every day, because my body is just not attracted to it anymore. And my body is more attracted to fresh vegetables and, you know, good wholesome food and meats and things like that. And just eating real food, it's more attracted to that. And that is more delightful to me prior to, you know, before I discovered that. And so what I want you to think about, and I hope what you take away from me sharing this story, is to start to look at your health as an actual superpower. And that is the way that I look at health when I'm working with my clients. One of my clients at the moment has adrenal fatigue, and the adrenal fatigue is making her learn to set boundaries. And that conversation is about, you know, what happened in her background that said that she wasn't allowed to have boundaries. What beliefs did she create at some point in time that said she's not good enough, she's not lovable if she has boundaries? And can we actually talk to that inner messenger inside and let them know that that's not the truth? You are totally lovable just by breathing, just by having air in your lungs. You are more than enough. You are more than worthy. You are more than lovable. And anything you do on top of that is just extra. It's like icing on top of the cake with a cherry on top, because just being who you divinely are is more than enough. You cannot be any more than that. And so, you know, connecting in with that and unpacking the messages means she can set the boundaries that actually then sustains her health, and she gets to move forward into being more of who she is. And the same for me in that moment. As I unpacked that belief, I could, you know, move forward into the future, and it then gets to be easy to lean into that health, lean into that desire that we want to create, or move away from the sickness that we've been holding on to. And so again, what I really want you to take away from this story is, when you're struggling with something, if you've got a health condition of some type, some shape, some form, there's really likely to be an emotional connection with that too. Because what happens with our soul and what happens with our emotions always has a manifestation in the physical. And our physical is how it often will talk to us, because we've stopped listening. From the moment we were babies, we've been taught to stop listening to our bodies. You know, as a baby, you might have been demand fed, and you were fed when you were hungry, you were changed and all of that sort of stuff, most likely, well, hopefully. And then some parents will want to do things like controlled crying, or they want to get you onto a schedule. And if that's the case for you, then you learn a little bit earlier to start ignoring what your body is saying, because you'll get fed at this time, at this place, and how much you're going to be fed. But, you know, let's say they demand fed all the way to solids. Once they hit solids, then we start to train our kids to eat breakfast, to eat lunch, to eat dinner. Here's how much food you get. Here's the type of food you get. And we teach them to stop listening to their body and to start listening to the clock. The clock outside of you dictates when you're going to feel hungry, because it's not 1 o'clock yet, or it's not 12 o'clock yet, or some other arbitrary number that is decided in your house is the time to eat. And we teach kids from that age to stop trusting and listening to their bodies. And so we've been, by the time we get to adulthood, had our fingers in our ears and going, la 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 la, I can't hear you anymore. And we stop listening to our bodies. And for me, as a naturopath and a coach, one of my favorite things to do is to train you to start listening to your body again and start seeing it as your superpower, as your superpower in guiding you to experience more of you. Every time you have something going on with your body, if you've got a thyroid condition, then it's likely that somewhere in your life you've been suppressing, holding down, shutting down, blocking your energy from being able to speak your truth. If you've got, a kidney condition, then there might be likely that you have a problem with filtering things out of your world, setting up boundaries, but you might also have a problem with grief. If you've got a problem with your liver, then you may have been, anger may have been banned in your family and it's not something you're allowed to have. When actually, anger's not a bad thing. Anger is designed to create action. And when we start to look at our emotions as actual energy in motion that are designed for goodness, that are designed for our superpower, then we can start to embrace them and go, I feel you there. What are you here to teach me? What are you here to guide me in? And we can go on this journey of self-discovery, of not just, I need to get rid of that health condition, but what is it there to teach me? How do I get to experience more of myself through this experience and connecting with what my body and my emotions and my spirit and soul are here to teach me? So when I'm looking and I'm working with my clients, I'm of course working on that physical level. What foods are you eating? What herbs are you doing? What things are you doing lifestyle wise with your body? Are you moving? Are you getting out in the sun? But then I'm also listening to another layer of what are the emotional drivers here? What are the trapped emotions or emotions that haven't been allowed to be in motion? What are they? And how can we facilitate the movement of those so that you can experience yourself even more? All of our health issues have some emotional or physical connection with them in some way, shape, or form. And it can be that the emotion creates the health problem, or it could be the health problem then creates the emotional problem as well, or a little bit of vice versa. And so that's part of the work that I do when I'm working as a naturopath and a coach with my clients, is helping them to untangle this journey of self-discovery. And so I often say to my clients that, while you've come to me because of this thing, we know we're going to fix this thing as well. And it wouldn't be fair for me to say to you that I can just give you a supplement or a pill and that's going to fix everything. Because it's not. It's a whole journey. It's a whole journey back to you. So, and that for me, I feel like, explaining what I do as a naturopath and a coach is a little bit challenging at times, because it's not just you come to me, you tell me your health problems, and I tell you the food or supplement or whatever to fix it. We're looking at the whole picture. We're looking at all the things that make you you. And actually, my job is not just to make your health better. It's actually to help you get to know yourself in a whole new way, in a new way of abundance and love, and see yourself in this space of kindness and generosity to yourself. So there you go. Thank you so much for listening to me during this time. I really love it if you stepped away from this session and you connect it in with what is your body trying to tell you? What is the superpower of your physical manifestation of those symptoms? What are they there for? What are they there to guide you for? What are the little nuggets that you can see? And do you need to get some help figuring that out? Because that's what I do, help you figure that out. We figure it out with food, we figure it out with herbs, we figure it out with lifestyle, and we figure it out with the emotional, spiritual work that we do. So if you're loving this and you want more of it, you're welcome to connect with me and book in for a session, and we can totally work on that. Or you could come join me in the Naturopathic Life membership. which is a membership that I created in order to help people take the power back. Take their power back when it comes to health, as well as that holistic picture. So once a week we have a masterclass. We talk about a particular thing within the body. So we've talked about dental, how to have healthy teeth. We have talked about detoxification and the processes of detoxification. We've talked about, I've done 2 masterclasses now on MTHFR and understanding what that is and how that works. And then every week we focus on a nutrient or a herb, so that you can learn what's in your garden that you could already be using to help yourself. What could you be adding to your natural first aid kit so you've got it on hand and you can start using it. And then our 3rd week, we do a mindset activity where we connect in with things. So of course, when we did detoxification, we talked about anger and we talked about the benefits of anger and how, anger is not something to be afraid of. We just need to learn to use it resourcefully. And as we move into that resourceful anger, which is anger is designed to create action. When we move into that, we can use it to our benefit and to the goodness of all those around us. What we have experienced, though, is unresourceful anger. And that's why people are afraid of experiencing anger, because we've seen unresourceful anger. We just want to point it in the direction of resourcefulness. And then our last call for the month is a live question and answer. So you jump on Zoom with me, you ask whatever questions you want, and we go back and forth and we answer them. And so if you want to join that, I will leave the links below and probably up in the header somewhere so that you can tap into the Naturopathic Life membership. It's $5 for the first month, $33 a month after that. And it's a great place to hang out. And it's my space where I get to teach you all of the wisdom that has been bestowed upon me from my mentors, from the divine, from all of the experience that I've been gathering for the many decades that I've been working on all of this stuff. All right, that's it for me for tonight. Thank you so much for holding space for me as I shared my story with you. And I would love it if you have found this touching, if you found this useful for you, if it started to awaken a story for you. Leave me a message. Let me know, because I would love to hear that. And I'm gonna jump off and go back through some of these questions that are there. But thank you again for joining me tonight. I hope you have the best day ever. And bye for now. Much love and many blessings. Christina, bye.